Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tarmack. Welcome to the GnomeCast. How's it going? How's life? Cheers if you're a coffee drinker, if you're a tea drinker like noMad, you know, you like your scented water. That's totally fine. It's all good. How's it going, boys?
It's going.
Well
enough. Well enough.
Yeah.
Good, good. So we usually have a couple of guests on. Welsknight at this point has been on the majority of the podcast, so that's fun. And you know, it's always good to have him back. We might have to, yeah, maybe just make it a permanent slot. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm good with that. We can rebrand it the Nightcast. Rolls off the tongue a little better.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So Welsknight is a YouTuber of some renown, much greater renown than I, and does God, man, so many videos. I wish seriously, like 2 videos a week, 3 videos a week for me is this has been a great success. And lately it's been pretty bad, but you're doing tons a day. It's great.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's the grind is real, but what's the saying? If you work a job that you enjoy, you never work a day in your life, or something like that.
That's true. That is true. I'm not. Yeah, I would love to do this full time. It'd be so great. Further on down the list, we got noMad, who is on the patron side in my Discord. Welcome. Who are you? What do you do? What are you up to? How's life?
Well, life is fairly good except for the weather here. It's been a little cold recently, but I'm up in Ontario, Canada. Other than that, I don't really do much. I'm not very creative. I'm mostly just hanging out in a Discord on Patreon and kind of do my own thing.
Yeah, but you got the good mic there. So is that just for multiplayer gaming and some of that kind of stuff, or are you looking into doing streaming, YouTube, anything like that?
No, it was just at some point last year I decided to upgrade my audio. I always been really into like listening music and whatnot. So it was kind of like, yeah, I can either get like a DAC and the amp, or I can get an audio interface and hey, maybe get a better mic.
Yeah, no, it sounds good. I see the Dishonored Collector's Edition mask over there in the back. That's
yeah, I have some of my trophies up on the mantle.
That's good stuff.
Witcher 3 Collector's Edition statue and Soldier, what is it, 47 from Overwatch.
Right. That makes sense to me. And last but not least, in the whitest room that has ever existed, we have DracoRanger, who's one of the moderators that I've got on Discord as well, and one of the I would say one of the greatest sources of discussion that we have on Discord. Lots of good questions and topics and stuff like that. So it's good to have him here. Dracco.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah. Somehow I asked a lot of questions, Tarmack liked them, and I got put as a moderator. Not really sure where I went from there.
That's how it always happens, isn't it? You get active in the community and you move up.
Yeah, it's all good. And you're a programmer and all of that kind of wonderful stuff. I know we've been working on some bot things, and which I've been dropping the ball on, but that's just kind of par for the course at this stage.
Yeah, it is.
Thanks.
Do you want to share the quote from last night, or?
Oh, which? What did I miss?
It's the one about just how disorganized you are from for this entire session.
Oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Sorry, still scrolling through. It was something to the effect.
Oh. Go ahead. Sorry.
It was something to the effect of, so you don't have a script, you don't have everyone chosen yet, and you don't even know what time zone you're in, or what time zone it's going to be.
Yeah, we were fighting over time zones because Universal Time doesn't care about daylight savings and all that. So Mountain Standard Time, there's MST and MDT, and they're an hour off, and I couldn't be bothered. This whole month has been just chaos for me. And then my boss was in Mexico this week, last week rather, and so I haven't gotten anything done. So this was a let's rush and put this together, and I think it's going to be good. I think it'll be okay. So usually, I want to start off by talking about what games people have been playing. Now we know, Wells has been playing a lot of Minecraft and Total War and some of that kind of stuff, right?
Yep,
Still
indeed.
going on that.
Yes.
and RimWorld?
Also, Slay the Spire.
Slay
I
the
don't know if
Spire.
you've
That's
seen
a
or
big
played
one.
that yet. It's so good. It is incredibly good. And actually started playing a little bit of FTL again.
FTL. Okay.
Yeah. There's a talk about a blast from the past. A couple years back now that was actually like popular, but
I tried it. I'm not smart enough to play that game. I feel like
it's FTL is punishingly difficult. It really is. Like easy mode is your normal mode on that game.
Yeah.
But it's good, and Slay the Spire kind of is the same way, but easier than FTL. And it's got kind of like that deck building component to it as well. I've developed a healthy love for roguelikes over the last year or two.
What's the premise behind Slay the Spire? What's the catch?
So it's a roguelike, like FTL or The Binding of Isaac or any number of other roguelikes. Take your pick. But it's the premise is basically it's deck building. So you start out, you choose a character. The character has a deck of 10, 15 cards, and as you advance through the run, you can pick up new cards and you can delete cards from your deck. And your goal is to basically beat the final boss, assemble a deck that actually functions together and not die. And it's got a lot of variety because you don't have complete control over the cards that you're going to have access to throughout the run. Basically, every time you beat an enemy, you win a fight, you get the choice of like 3 cards that you can and you can put one of them in your deck, and you have no guarantee like what those 3 cards are going to be. So you have to kind of anticipate what cards you might get, hope that you get them, get rid of stuff that just is dead weight. Like it's good. Think like kind of like Isaac meets Hearthstone.
It looks a lot like Hand of Fate if you played that.
Yeah, it's also got definitely some Hand of Fate in it as well. It's really good, and it's in early access right now. It's getting like weekly updates, and it's awesome. It's super good. I played it for the first time maybe like a month ago now or something like that. Whenever it first came out and Northern Lion started doing videos on it, I was like, huh, that looks like a game that's right up my alley.
Yeah.
So I tried it and I'm like, well, I'll give it a try. 8 hours later, I'm like, this game is amazing. By the way, 8 hours has passed. When did that happen? Like it's just so good.
Yeah.
It's really great, except for the art style, to be honest. It looks a little like thrown together, kind of maybe advanced MS Paint art.
Yeah, I mean,
That's my biggest knock against the game. Like, I don't expect, like, it's a smaller team, obviously. Like, I don't expect them to be amazing, but it would be nice if it was, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the art style, I could see where the art style would throw some people off. But then again, like, you got games like FTL don't exactly have incredible graphics either.
Yeah.
Same with like Isaac, a lot of roguelikes.
Has a certain amount of charm to it. I think it's kind of rooted in nostalgia to a certain degree. I said, like, if you just show a screenshot of Slay the Spire without explaining the mechanics, like, I wouldn't take it against anybody who thinks it's like a complicated game.
That's rough for any indie studio, right? When somebody prejudges your game based on the image, and it could be an amazing game. I really like when games are starting to bring in the card mechanic, as long as they don't go down the loot box route. It's a neat way of adding some variety to it. Like one of the games that I've been playing all week is Forced Showdown, which was one that came out a year and a half ago. I can't even remember. It might be 2 years ago now. And it's the same sort of thing where you have like 8 arena battles that you're going to fight in a row, and you have a deck that you've built, and you have mana that increases every run, and you play your cards, and they give you sort of permanent buffs, or they're consumables, or whatever the case, right? And it buffs you up so that by the time you get to the end, you've got a boss fight, and you can actually be really good at it. And it's a ton of fun. It's just it's a neat variety mechanic. Outside of the usual Binding of Isaac, where it's just going to throw items at you and you have no influence over it. So, all right. Well, that's interesting. Oh, all right.
I'm just going to say that I will say that it is an early access, and I'm very willing to forgive issues with graphics or stuff like that in early access. They can definitely improve and fix stuff like that.
Yeah, they
And I
certainly
don't think
can.
they're going to revamp the entire art style though over the
That's
course
true.
of early access.
Oh, I would honestly wish, like, I wish they have, like, they get enough money through early access to hire like a really good artist to. I think the game can be a lot better if, like, a lot more appealing to a lot more people if it would look. I'm not
Yeah.
saying like Hearthstone style, like that's unreasonable, but something more interesting, like more inspired, to be honest.
Sure.
Fair enough. So, Dracco, what have you been playing?
Getting over on Stellaris mostly. Also, I've been replaying Breath of the Wild after watching the speedrun AGDQ. It's really nice being able to play with infinite sprint and fall damage canceling.
How fast was the speed run? I didn't catch that one.
I think it was like 4 or 6 hours. It was so it was all major missions, so they had to do 30 shrines and kill all the 4 monsters and stuff before reaching Ganon.
Right. I've been playing a little bit of that recently. I don't have a Switch. I borrowed from a friend. And I mean it's interesting. It's a fun game. I don't know where the 10 out of 10s are coming from though. And I know that's, maybe a little contentious, and people can feel free to tweet at me on their devices that were made by slave children in Asia if they really want to. But I
gotta agree. I totally gotta agree with you. It's good. It's not Wind Waker or Ocarina of Time or even Twilight Princess though. Like, I don't know. I'd say like
issue with Odyssey.
8 out of 10. Yeah.
Right. Odyssey's it's a good game. It's a good
I'm
game.
gonna disagree on that one. Odyssey though. Ooh.
But there's so much fluff. There's so much, I don't know. It doesn't, like, okay, so Mario 64, right? You had all of the paintings that you're going to jump into, and you will go back to these levels more often. I feel like the open world hurts it in Odyssey, right? If they had smaller, more contained things and done it more like 64, I would have enjoyed it more. I don't know. Some of it just felt superfluous, and then they're giving you moons for doing basically nothing a lot of the time.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Odyssey was the first Mario game that felt like a Mario game to me since 64.
I mean, it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. I won't go that far, but I don't know.
I might say you're doing a little. You might be going through a little rose-tinted glasses there. Some of the choices in 64 and any of the earlier Mario games were a little questionable.
Oh yeah, no, that's I don't dispute that. So you're really enjoying going through Breath of the Wild again?
I mean, it's nicer, it's faster because I can just keep sprinting continuously. Just makes it a little more interesting, a little bit less. I spent 20 times trying to kill a monster that's more powerful than me.
Yeah, well, fair enough. I'd be curious to see how the homebrew Switch stuff is going to affect things, if we're going to be able to get any kind of modding into these, because my biggest frustration with Zelda is the weapons, right? I mean, stamina. The stamina mechanic to me, the way that they built the open world is there for a reason. It actually matters because they don't want you to be able to just swim to the island in the middle of the lake right off the hop. Like that's intentional. But the weapon thing just feels grindy. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wish that accurate. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I sort of wish they had made it so that the rewards for each of the dungeons were like actually invincible. So you have a default hammer, you have a default sword, you have a default bow, and you have a default spear. All of those would just make it much you have something to depend on. You have upgrades like from those, but it's nothing like. But you're never stuck with I'm only have a branch to fight a Lionel.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, it's like, okay, you did this big complicated thing. Congratulations on completing this quest. Here's a weapon you can use 5 times before it breaks. Congratulations.
Yeah, no, that would be an interesting way of balancing it, right? Here's your base minimum damage that you're in this area now. You have completed something to get you into that area, and you have your base weapon. And everything in that area that is breakable does a little bit more damage than your base weapon, or a lot, or whatever, depending on the case. But you always have that thing that you can fall back on.
Yeah, I have to echo a lot of things that were said about Breath of the Wild. So I got my Switch around Christmas time, and I basically got Mario Kart for it and Breath of the Wild, and like hearing all the hype that was going through the year about that game, it kind of just doesn't grab me. Like it's hard for me to play it for more than like an hour and a half. I can't even tell you why. Like obviously there are like numerous problems with weapon durability system that people said, but also just the whole like I have to be honest, like I never like that's my first Zelda. Like I've never been really a console person, and I usually have something portable to take with me on the road. So I was flying uh, around the Christmas time, so I was like, hey, that might be a nice time to pick it up. But it just I don't know, like it's like a nice art style, but like the whole world seems I don't know a little too twee for me to be honest. Like it's very hard for me to say like to play it for more than like an hour and a half, like because what I read about it, people were saying how they were lost in the world, and I just like it doesn't happen to me. Like I maybe have like 68 hours in it right now over the course of basically a month, and yeah, like I might like pick up my Switch, play it for like half an hour to an hour, and be like, you know what, like I just don't feel it. It's, I guess to each their own, but yeah, like I
I'm
cannot
glad people
say
are
that,
enjoying
like
it.
I'm mind blown like some people were.
Yeah, no, I'm glad people are enjoying it. That's awesome. I mean, it's a system seller. It's making Nintendo do really well, and when they do really well, they can put out more stuff. That's great. You know, where's our new Mario Kart? Where's our new Metroid? Where's our new Smash Brothers? Right on the Switch. Let's get to that, and if they sell a ton now, then they can dedicate those teams, and it's all good, right?
Yeah, my biggest hope from Breath of the Wild, to be honest, is because it introduces a lot of immersive sim mechanics into an open world game, which is unusual. And my hope, because I'm a huge fan of immersive sim genre, and my hope is that those elements become kind of like RPG elements, maybe like 10, 15 years ago, where like all other games started introducing them in.
Right.
And that's what I'm hoping for, because I like where you have a playground and you have your tool sets and you can add and subtract from it, and like you have multiple approaches that you can pick to each mission, like to each objective.
Yeah,
that's like a lot of fun, right? And like just interactive stuff where, for example, in the Breath of the Wild, if you set a crate on fire, whatever was in the crate gets cooked, like stuff like that, like always puts me into the game. Like it always makes me like tinker with it. So that's a lot of fun, right?
Yeah, I like the fire, like, and then the wind takes it away.
Specifically, Breath of the Wild. We'll see. Maybe over the course of this year, little by little, I'll get through it, and maybe my opinion will change. Who knows?
Anything else, Dracco? You've been crunching through.
Stellaris and getting over it. Getting over it. I've been playing on and off just because it's designed to aggravate you and make you try and be a better player. Stellaris, I keep making it to mid game, and then I'll accidentally ally someone halfway across the galaxy. Everyone else will be against me because they just happen to be there, and stuff will go absolutely wrong.
Yeah. Which one's getting over it?
It's a indie title. Basically, you're a guy who sits in a pot, and you have to use a sledgehammer to move you over a mountain.
Oh, that right. Yeah, with the guy that
don't know anything about it. My friend sent me to it saying, "I bet you can't beat this."
Yeah, with the guy in the pot that is very clearly Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I was saying, have you ever heard about Co-op? I assume you have.
Yes, I did.
It's the same guy, Bennett 40. If I'm not mistaken, I think he teaches game design and he's from Australia. So his whole shtick is like making games with unusual like movement mechanics, and that's basically why he did that. Like he had I think Humble Bundle approached him and they wanted him to make a game for them, and like he had like a few ideas swimming around. He was like, yeah, like since they offered me money, I was like, why the hell not? And that's pretty much the history of that game.
I don't think
I saw it. Like it's personally not my thing. Like I wouldn't even go there.
Pretty much. My friend basically basically knows that I can never turn down a challenge, so he just sent me that. Like, have you heard of Secret of the Magic Crystal? It's a pony breeding game where you have to breed like 200 or 512 ponies to reach the end. He sent me it. I finished it in 18 hours, basically over a week, because he said I couldn't beat it.
That
was
you know,
a waste of...
you're being highly suggestible in the video game
Yeah.
industry is a dangerous thing sometimes.
Yeah, that was my best time ever, but
That's good.
I mean, yeah, he gave me a few Steam keys as a reward, but
yeah,
not sure if it was worth it.
noMad, what have you been playing?
Well, we touched on a few things, as I said, Breath of the Wilds. The other thing that kind of relates to what Welsknight was talking about, the Slay the Spire. And it's not a video game. It's Netrunner. It's a living card game.
Oh, yeah.
Me and a few of my friends have been getting into it. And why is it related? Is because the guys who designed Slay the Spire were very active in the Netrunner community, and I think one of them runs one of the fan sites for the game.
Hang on, Netrunner?
So that's been pretty fun. Yeah,
Yes.
Netrunner. It's a card game by Fantasy Flight. I'm just starting, and then it's me and a friend of mine had our first couple of games last week. Yeah, last weekend, and it was pretty good. But in terms of games, I've been playing Hand of Fate. I'm a little stuck on it. I think I'm 2 or 3 challenges before beating it. Everything else is golded, and I've been just grinding out some of the equipment cards and some of the encounter cards there. It's pretty fun. I'm a big fan of the first one and the second one.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask.
It's both improves it and not, because they try to first time it's obviously an indie game, so they were I guess a little scrappy on the first one. It's very structured in terms. I think there are 4 sets of cards, and I don't recall them because I haven't played it in 3-4 years. This one makes it a little more fluid. It each challenge is a little different, so it makes you change your deck a little bit, which I like. And I'll probably finish it within the next few weeks, but there is never enough time to do everything.
Right.
And if you enjoy card games and chance in your games, this is definitely a game for you. The other one I was playing was, let me see, it's Star Traders Frontiers. It's in early access right now, and it's also one of the smaller games. It's an indie studio. I think there are 3 brothers who making this one, and for a while now they kind of been they have different games in different genres. They have a 4X strategy. They have a tactics game similar to XCOM, and it's all set in the same universe. And I guess the best way to describe it would be, it's 40K mixed with Game of Thrones and Dune in terms of theme. So the idea is, I'm not sure how familiar you are with 40K lore. There is an idea of rogue traders, which is basically you have a carte blanche to do whatever you want. You're given a ship and some equipment, and you go in the universe, and it's up to you what you want to do. So that's how this game plays, and where the Game of Thrones comes in is there are, I think, 10 or 12 major powers in the world, big dynastic families, and needless to say, the game is set in more space age rather than medieval times. But none of them. You are more of a minor noble with a freedom to act on your own, and it's up to you to align with different houses, and or maybe you want to play them against each other. I just started it. I think I might have 3 or 4 hours in it.
Yeah.
But so far it looks extremely interesting.
What was it called again?
Star Traders Frontiers.
Star Traders.
Early access. I mean, it looks like people are enjoying it so far. The reviews and whatnot are very positive. So.
I think the whole idea of the studio, like they make like fairly complex games. My only gripe with it, and part of it might be because it's an early access and they don't really have a proper tutorial. Like it's very bare bones tutorial. The interface is designed by someone from like Andromeda Galaxy. Like it's very hard to wrap your mind around it. I think for the first like hour, I was like, okay, like this is a lot, and like it's very hard to navigate because you have a like at the start just so you understand, you have a ship with like 5 officers and like 30 crew, and each of them is basically like a character in the RPG where they have like a whole stat sheet and like the levels and progressions and everything. It's very dense.
Yeah. Whereas normally a game's going to give you, you know, your character and a couple of others. Like, let's start small. You can learn how to use, and then we'll work our way up to the big capital ship that has a whole bunch of crew and like it.
Yeah, pretty much. Like it's like it's kind of like jumping off the cliff. But if you like, if the setting interests you, I cannot recommend it hard enough. Like there is a lot there. Like even in the early access, they have a lot of storylines already, and space battles are a little too simplistic, I would say. It's more of like kind of it's turn-based. So, well, I shouldn't say turn-based. It's you queue your moves and the opponent queues his moves, and then they play out, and it's like the next round. The ground combat is similar in a certain way to Darkest Dungeon, but a little more simplistic. Like there is no obviously like what is it, like sanity meter, but the same idea where you have like 4 people on each side and they each take turn depending on their stats going in, and they have abilities that affect only certain slots on the other side. So yeah, it's like it's a little rough around the edges right now, and I hope they will iron it out. But it's definitely something that like I'll put more hours into.
Yeah, might have to take a look at that. Speaking of bad tutorials, Sea of Thieves. Holy crap! I played a lot of that this week, and it just doesn't tell you anything. You know nothing about what's going on. It's here. You're in a tavern, and there's a ship at the dock, and have fun. Go figure it out. You know. I hope they fix that. I really do. But okay,
tell me more about it if you can.
Well, okay, so Sea of Thieves is
because I'm really interested in this one, but I have no idea what the game is. It's just like the premise of it intrigues me, but
I don't know I don't know if they're going to put a lot of work into single player content, right? So Sea of Thieves, for anybody that hasn't seen it, is you're a pirate and you get a ship and you sail around and you do stuff on the ship. During the alpha and the beta, they had most of the stuff turned off. So there are a bunch of different kinds of ship missions that you can have. You can go find wildlife and capture it and bring it back, or it can be here's a bunch of supplies, you know, you get to be a rum runner or something, you know, whatever that kind of thing is. And what they had active in the beta was treasure hunts. So you go to this little guy with, you know, gold eyes, and he's clacking his fingers together, all, you know, Mr. Burns like, and you buy voyages off of him, and you take the voyage onto your ship, you put it on the table on your ship, and your crew can vote on it. Or if you just buy it itself, it just happens, right? And it'll give you a clue or a map or something like that, and you have to go find the island and then go to the island and find the treasure on the island. And it's a lot of fun. For me, most of the fun that I was having with it is just sailing the ship around. Because you have to control the angle of the sail, you can control how far up or how far down it is. You're controlling the steering, obviously, and the anchor, and you got cannons and all of, like that. That's actually a lot of fun. You got to worry about wind and all of these sorts of things. So it's a lot of fun. I just don't know what it's going to be once it's released. You know, they add in all of these other types of missions, but it's not really going to be a storyline, I don't think. I mean, it's primarily a multiplayer kind of game. Griefing is going to be a huge problem. So I don't know. We'll have to see what they fix. It's a lot of fun, but I kind of feel like in order to have a lot of fun, you got to play it with friends.
Yeah, that's about what one of the streamers I was watching said. He actually ended up stowing away on another player's ship and joining their crew because he couldn't like, if you're by yourself, you're just so much more underpowered compared to everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really, really tough. You're on a one-person little sloop ship, and you come across a four-person ship with its 4 or 5 cannons on either side. It's pretty tough.
Do you lose
pretty
something
tough.
besides the time if you get like griffed and killed, or?
So I mean, okay. So the way that the respawn mechanic works in it, I hope is a little bit different, because you can basically, you die, you go to the ghost ship, right? And the ghost ship, you sit there for a little while, the door opens, you walk through it, and then you respawn somewhere near where your ship was, right? If your ship is sunk, and in a lot of cases the other ship is still where you respawn when you die, you can easily get killed again. So that's a bad mechanics problem. And then there's a sort of a sea, like a merman kind of guy, that you can teleport to a new ship in the area. And that's just if you have, like, if you're out sailing and you fall off your ship, you're either going to die or you're going to wait until the little merman shows up to say, hey, let's go back to a ship again. So it's fun. It's just, it's definitely not finished. It didn't feel like a beta. A beta test should not be missing features, right? That's bug fixes. That's not a beta test.
Everything I've seen from the game, like, it seems like they have a fun idea, but there is, like, I don't see what the game is.
No, I totally get it. It's just a lot of it is to do with the mechanics are so fun. Sailing around in that game is just a ton of fun, and I don't know. I don't know what else to really like. So I really liked Assassin's Creed Black Flag because the freedom of being able to jump off of your ship and go do something, and then come back and jump back on your ship again. Like there's something unique and fun to that, right? It's like playing a racing game to me is more fun when you can get out of the car. Right, if it's just a racing game where you're in the car and that's it, then it loses me a little bit. So I don't know. I wanna talk. We have a topic of the month, and I want to get to this because this one is. There's been a lot of stuff lately that has been going on, which kind of flags this as something that's going to be an issue at some point. Whether or not we own video games, and also whether or not we should. So there were a couple of stories recently. We've got Paragon, Epic Games, their MOBA Paragon shut down, or is shutting down rather, is shutting down in April, because people are just not playing it. Not enough people are playing it. Everybody's moving to Fortnite and PUBG and whatever the case. And then also Gigantic is shutting down in July. And so this is the games as a service model. Right, they have created the game that is to be funded by players ongoing over time, skins, loot boxes, whatever the monetization is. And they're not the only ones. There are tons of them, right? Battleborn was another, like, in the sort of shooter-ish arena genre. Not quite Overwatch, but close enough. So I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on this, and I'll start with Dracco on obviously whether or not we do own our games as a product, and whether we should, because there are some differences there.
So one of my thoughts is that there's a big difference between what would be nice and what is feasible. So you're not going to get a company to release their source code for a game. It's just not. It'd be nice, but it would potentially destroy the company because they're giving away trade secrets, they're giving away algorithms, they're giving away stuff they need and are going to use in the future. So any of these multiplayer games are very, very hard to actually keep going, especially because it generally means that they're already dead if they're being pulled off. So while I believe there is a right to preservation, feasibly, I don't see a way that you can really do it with a multiplayer online game, especially with the monetization models of loot crates and similar, because rebuilding your character, managing portable characters will require you to work so closely with a business that's already trying to kill it.
Yeah.
It'd be nice, but there's no forward solution in my opinion if we're talking about like giving it to the gamers and letting them maintain their own setup and letting them keep it functional going forward.
Yeah. Some of this is why I was so happy when Gears of War 4 had a LAN mode in it. This is rare these days for any games to have any kind of LAN functionality, right? But I mean, you can go back as far as Ultima Online and the server shards and all of that, and even World of Warcraft, and people are building these private servers where they have to code the AI themselves because all of the AI is handled server side. And it's a bit tough because those big games are the ones that people care about, right? If Overwatch shut down tomorrow because it was not feasible, gamers would lose their minds over not owning their video games, right? But if Lawbreakers shuts down, the game that had gotten to 0 concurrent players at one point not all that long ago, who cares, right? Well, nobody's playing it anyways. That's the reason it shut down in the first place.
And let me interject. That's kind of, I guess my main point is that only games that are not successful, that lose a lot of players in the service model, shut down. And at that point, do we really care? Because we kind of voted with our wallets as the community that no, we don't think that this game is interesting or good enough. And I understand, like, it's a generalization. There are obviously, like, in any game there would be a few players who would care, right? You can always find those, but by and large, games like that are designed as a service, if they're successful, they stay around for a long time. Look at the Dota 2s or Leagues of Legends of the world, Counter Strikes, right? Like stuff like that sticks around if people want it to stick around. And generally those companies do not shut down them until they have to.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true.
I do think, though, that just about every game, for the most part, has some sort of a life expectancy. Yeah. I mean, even a game that maybe not, one of the best selling games of all time or something like that, but I'd say a game that has even like slightly above average sales, those servers are going to go offline eventually. Are there still Halo 1 for the original Xbox servers up?
No, God, no.
You know what I mean? Like, and that was a great game. That game sold amazingly well, but those servers are gone.
Yeah.
So, and it's just one of those things where eventually multiplayer servers are going to get shut down in like 99% of cases, unless you're talking about like a World of Warcraft or something like that, where they are constantly
and that will go away at some point too, right?
And
like,
it will.
I
probably
would be very
will.
surprised if World of Warcraft is around in 30 years, right?
And it very well may not be. But the thing with WoW is that WoW is continually putting money back into their product to overhaul it and update it and keep it modern-esque. You know what I mean? And a lot of games don't do that, where they just say, well, when it reaches the end of its life, it reaches the end of its life. So then you have this situation where you're buying games, and these games are meant to be multiplayer games. I mean, a lot of games barely even have a single player now, or have something that they call single player that, it's like 3 missions, and like, congratulations, you beat the single player campaign in 4 hours. Battlefront. Anyway,
Grand Theft Auto 5.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Well, Grand Theft Auto is kind of a sandbox, though, too. So, but anyway, I digress.
Just being a smartass.
Yeah. So the point then is that you're dropping $60, maybe $80, whatever, on this game, and you're going to get 5 years, maybe 10 years out of this game, at most. So and then what happens? Well, that is gone at the end. You can't continue to play it online, and if the online play is 95% of the game, then
it's a tough one.
My argument to that would be that not everything have to be preserved. Like, if you think back to film and literature, like, we don't really have like every play from like 1600s, right? Like, some of that was just not good enough and it was lost to time. That's similar argument. I mean, like, that stuff, and like, it's even more important to games because of how much emphasis we place on like new stuff. Because if you think about movies, right, like, you can watch like a 20-year-old movie or read like a 100-year-old book, and for you it still would be fresh, new, and like topical. Or it has a potential to. For games, not so much. Like there are certainly in aspects of like community that go back and like replay older games, but by and large, like everybody is kind of on a cutting edge, or maybe like it depends how we define it. Like if we say like I don't have any statistics, so I'm pulling those numbers off the air, right? But I would think that 80 to 90% of everyone on Steam plays games that within the last 5 years, right? Like not a lot of people constantly go back and play older games.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
Constantly, no.
outside of your
occasionally,
Dotas and your
yes.
Counter Strikes and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Dracco,
but-
you had a point you wanted to get in there.
Well, two things. One, I do want to point out that we're in an age where selling 7 million, 9 million copies is a failure according to publishers.
That's
So,
true. That's true. That is
uh,
what they said about Battlefront. 7
yes.
million. They were expecting 9.
Yes. And two, just because like even good games that have a lot of, or even good things that have a lot of people love them and want it and have valid reason to preserve, don't ever really make it. Like going back to your quote about plays, there are multiple Shakespeare plays that do not exist. Like we have references to them, we have like poorly made bootleg copies of them, but the originals are gone.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, we're gonna have games like that were protected by De Novo that never get a patch out, that never get put into the actual canon of the internet. They'll just go away, even if they're single player, even if they don't depend on those elements.
There are a lot of other reasons why something might go away, right? I mean, it wasn't all that long ago that all of the Transformers, Ninja Turtles, games on Steam mysteriously vanished. People that already had them could still play them, so I mean that's a good thing. But they vanished because the rights were lost to sell it, right? I don't know if they're back now, right? But that's an example of something that can cause something to go away, even when it's still popular. We just forgot to sign the contract again. Oh shit, it's gone now, right?
Yeah.
Or in
Well,
most
and-
cases, I think it just doesn't make sense for them to re-sign those rights because if the sales do not justify the additional expense of like lawyers,
Well,
like all of that. At some points, companies say, "Well, yeah, we can do it, but how much goodwill are we gonna get from that? Like from having like 6-7-year-old game available for sale?"
Some of these are very complicated. It's more complicated than that. Like so, I saw this on Reddit not all that long ago. The original Batman movie, they had the rights to do a Batman movie, but for whatever silly trademark copyright related reason, they couldn't use the Batman logo. They had to change the Batman logo. There are 2 little extra nubs on the tail of the bat so that they could make it distinct enough from a trademark and copyright perspective to use it in the movie. Like some of this stuff is very complicated. It doesn't have to be that it's not worthwhile. It's just that it didn't get done in time and it had to be pulled. GTA, some of the old GTA games, they have to change the music because they couldn't relicense the music, right? And a lot of there's more to it.
I don't think they couldn't have relicensed the music. It's just the cost of it probably didn't make sense to them.
Oh, perhaps.
Because I think you were talking about that was San Andreas, right? That a few years back lost.
It was something
20 or 21 songs, if I'm recalling it correctly.
Something like that. But I just mean that as an example of how complicated some of those sorts of things can get. I don't see the Tolkien estate licensing or signing any new licenses. Once the current arrangements end, it's over, and you won't be able to do any of that because they've been burned on a bunch of this, and I don't think that they're very happy with it.
No, like
a lot of that
I'm not
kind of
saying
stuff.
it's an easy topic. It's definitely complicated, and each case is distinct and has its own challenges. But in terms of archival of games, I just don't think we should archive everything. Like,
well, let me jump in on that as well, because I don't think it's just about archival and preserving these games so they can be remembered for all of history. I mean, excuse me. If you buy a movie, right, which is a form of entertainment, right? You buy a DVD, whatever. you can then watch that movie forever as long as you have the right equipment to play it, right? Whereas you buy a game, if it's an online game like we were talking about before that has a life expectancy of 5 years, you're going to get 5 years out of that $60, $80 purchase, right? So
let me pose a question to you then. Let's say, and I don't know like anything about movies, but let's say you went in and bought a copy of Sharknado on DVD. Would you really be willing to go back and rewatch it? Like, is it a appealing proposition of rewatching a bad movie like 10 years down the line?
Yeah, if you like the movie, sure.
Some people watch bad movies intentionally all the time.
I do. I love bad movies. I love movies that are so terrible they're great. Like that's an entire genre of movie.
Have you ever watched Shockma?
I have not.
No, you should look it up. It's a genetics research facility that experiments on baboons, and they're playing D&D in their after hours, and one of the very aggressive baboons gets out and kills everybody.
That sounds amazing. That sounds like a movie that I would love. You know,
it is so bad.
That's like an entire little sub culture of movies. You know, all your like B and C grade science fiction movies and stuff like that.
But it wasn't. I guess
bad that you can watch from the ironic point. It was just like very average.
My view on all of this is that to me it doesn't matter. I've never liked in the end user license agreement. It says that you are licensing the use of this product. You do not own this product, and the reason that they do that is to try and get around any obligations that they have to the end user, right? But when I buy something, I don't really care what the company wants to do with it. To me, I should be the one that gets to decide that, right? So if I have Sharknado on DVD, I don't have to necessarily watch it, but I can because I bought it. It's a thing that I own as a product, right? You don't have to own the intellectual property rights. You don't have to have gotten into that, but I own it as a product for personal use. And that's what bothers me about Denuvo so much, because it takes that right away from you so long as Denuvo hasn't been cracked. Now,
I think it's an argument of principle versus practicality.
Well,
because on principle, yeah, it's nice thing to have that you say it's a clear-cut line. If I bought something, I should have access to it for as long as I have it, right? But practically speaking, I don't see a lot of people going and playing any of those MOBAs 10 years down the line.
I still go back and play NES games every now and again.
I'll bring up that I actually converted Final Fantasy Tactics to an
that's the difference, that they're good, right? You like those games, and because the audience for those games that are getting shut down right now is so low, so little, like that's what it kind of says. Like, yeah, you might upset, like, I don't know, let's say.
But we're not just talking about games that are getting shut down because they're not popular. Keep in mind, we brought up the example earlier of Halo 1, right? Yeah. That was an extremely popular game. Tons of people loved Halo 1.
Yeah.
And you know, the multiplayer servers are no longer existent.
No, I understand it. And if you have an Xbox One and you're very interested in it, my understanding, you can go and buy a Halo collection. Yeah, it's an additional outlay. Understandable, but like, we cannot expect
out of cost
to preserve everything for all eternity, right? Like it's just not feasible. Like that's what I'm saying. Like it's an argument of principle versus practicality.
I see where you're going with it, and I don't necessarily disagree on some fronts. And the reason I'll say that is that some game types are simply this way by their very nature, right? You know, if I buy Hitman, for example, I should be able to continue to play that. They've got a bunch of online features, and those online features will fail, but I should be able to continue to play that game because it has a single-player experience. Nobody should ever be able to tell me no. Overwatch.
And Hitman is a really good example because they have those assassination missions that are rotated every week, and I know they, with the release of the box copy, they restarted the cycle. But if right now I go and buy Hitman, I would be locked out of the portion of the continent, and that was appealing to people who were buying it at the time, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like,
and still appeals to people as well.
Expect everything to be preserved in its initial state for all eternity, because the games are by the nature always get patched, right? You can argue saying like, hey, I saw that really fun video of Mass Effect when it came out, was all the faces being screwed up, and I want to go and experience that, and I cannot because all of that was patched out of the game.
We'll get to. I have something on that though. Dracco, go ahead.
Yeah. I think it was Extra Credits who actually did a good video on what does it mean to. I mean, I enjoyed it. But it was basically talking about what does it mean to be able to play the game that you own. Does it mean that you should have the right to be able to continue from a certain patch in World of Warcraft going forward, so you can take advantage of this extremely powerful ability? Does and if they do try and do something like that, do they have the obligation to protect you against like against exploits or something going wrong in the game? I disagree with the point that not everything can be preserved, because we have the ability to do that. That's what Internet Archive is, and they do it very well. They create emulators that actually allow you to play the game as it's meant to be played. So I don't know if that's a valid argument, but I will agree that it, like, practically you're probably right, but at the same time, it's not like just because it's not practical doesn't mean I don't have the right to try. And a lot of these games are designed.
My argument wasn't that you cannot preserve everything. My argument was like, should we preserve everything? Because I think we would benefit from curation in terms of archival, right? Like, there are certainly great games that should be preserved, and I'm not going to argue that. And we can probably preserve even stuff that's logged behind DRM. There are a lot of smart people in that community who can get in around that. But my question is, should we, right?
Yeah.
Because
but who decides what's good and what isn't?
Well, yeah, this is a good point from Chad on it.
Which falls
right, because games,
like, if it's
games
a live
are too
game
subjective
to the corporation that runs them, and if it's a game that's an abandonware, maybe on the part of the people who do that stuff, who do the preservation.
So here's a tricky piece of the argument too. Games are art, right? And I could say that technically, I mean, it may not meet everybody's definition of art, but YouTube videos are art as well, right? I'm not giving anybody a YouTube video. So does a person have a right to access a video that I wish to take down? It's a very, very tricky situation. Say you have somebody that goes off like Phil Fish when he decided he was going to quit the industry, right? What if he took Fez away and stopped selling it because he was so pissed off? Would we still have a right to archive that game? There's a really interesting, copyright, trademark related kerfuffle that can come out of that, because the original creator has the right to determine whether or not this copyrighted thing is available. Maybe you have to wait 70 years after he's dead.
The difference, though, is like you mentioned YouTube videos. People don't, well, except in very, very select circumstances, people aren't paying to buy access to that YouTube video.
Very true.
They have access to it for free, other than time, and they watch ads occasionally. But they're not paying any sort of out-of-pocket cost to watch those videos. They can get access to them, and there's no transaction there, right? There's no license. People don't have to agree to a EULA to watch a YouTube video.
No, for sure. But so you sell a video game, and the video game will the gaming archivists are going to look at this and say, we must archive this product, because that's what they do. That's their role, right? And then you decide you're going to take that product away for sale. Whose rights win? Is it the person who created it, or the people that have already archived it because they happened to buy one when it was for sale? I don't know. I only bring it up just out of an interest of how complicated some of these things can get. Right. The mention of. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm saying absolutely, and the example that Wells brought up. Well, you're not paying for vast majority of videos on YouTube. That's true. So would the same logic be applied to free-to-play games?
That's a tricky one too, for sure.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Like, to answer the question, who determines whether something should be archived or not? I think it comes down to each individual example and the push and shove within between the rights owner and people who try to preserve it, right? some battles would be lost, some would be won, depending on which side you've fallen onto, right? You can interpret it whichever way, and that what builds up the library, right? Like, I'm sure there were a lot of like great text and great plays that were unfortunately lost to time, right? But it's hard to judge their value if we don't have them, right? That's why like future generations would be looking at what was archived, and they probably wouldn't like, they might have like a footnote about Gigantic that it was shut down in 2018, and probably wouldn't care because they don't really know what they lost. And that's what I'm saying, like, it's a messy proposition, like, and it's a difficult question, and it all falls down to each individual example. But that's what creates like this determination whether we archive something or not, because there are constantly two forces: people who are opposed to archival, let's say a company that doesn't want to disclose the secrets, and people who want to archive it. And depending which of them wins in each specific situation,
it's an interesting discussion, right? Because it gets messy in a whole lot of ways really quickly, and I'm going to make it worse. So World of Warcraft changes their game, or Blizzard changes World of Warcraft regularly. They're patching things, they're adding content, they're doing whatever, right? And so there is a school of thought in the archival group that says, no, I paid for the game at this stage, I should be able to continue to access it at that stage. I don't want any of those advancements. But it's very hard to argue that, right? Because they're making the game, but they're adding to it. They're giving you more. They're doing more things. What about Battlefront, that has released their game? They took the microtransactions out, so everybody bought the game in a certain state, and they are now going to make it demonstrably worse by changing the monetization structure again, putting microtransactions back in within the next 3 or 4 months. Does that change the conversation?
Now, hold on a minute, because we've heard EA. They believe in microtransactions, and these microtransactions that they're adding back into the game are going to provide value to the customer.
I hate you so much right now.
No, that was similar to the issue I wanted to bring up, because we are talking about microtransactions as like you said, oh, they were gonna make the game demonstrably worse. But that's from whose position are you arguing, right? Because if you're arguing from the position of, well, let's say a whale for that game, someone who has a lot of money, there's a big Star Wars fan, for them that might be a boon, because they would be like, hey, I don't mind dropping 10 grand on that game to get everything I want in it.
I will give you the devil's advocacy.
To grind for it.
I will give you the devil's advocacy on the earlier point of archiving and all of that. But when a game is balanced around microtransactions and thus affects 100% of players, the less than 1% of players that pay money don't count.
I mean,
as far as
I will also
my point was the archival, right? If the percentage of people who enjoy the game is so low that it's not practical to archive it,
and I get you, and I'm there with you, but I don't know that we care about the whales when we're talking about microtransactions. Obviously, they do, right? But it is demonstrably worse. Yeah, go ahead, Dracco.
So, have you heard of Two Worlds or Two Worlds 2?
Yep.
Yeah.
It recently got microtransactions. A game that was released years ago has an objectively worse system and got rid of all the console commands which are necessary to play part of the game because it's coded so poorly. Like, it's objectively a far worse game because of microtransactions and those protections to make you want to use them.
Right. So they took out functionality that you could access for free, and they locked it behind paywalls. Microtransactions added to Rainbow Six Siege and The Division fairly recently-ish, or expanded at the very least. I don't. It makes me curious because it does. There's some kind of impact on that discussion of game ownership and things like that. If the decision is unilateral from the developer's side, in all cases, well, that's unfortunate. I think at the very least.
No, that's true, and that's why I'm saying that like there will always be someone who opposes it, and I think through that, I don't know, legal struggle or cultural struggle, however you want to put that, whatever gets archived and preserved, that's what happens, right? Like, and hopefully stuff that's important to people and that a lot of people think is great and worth preserving gets preserved, right?
Yeah.
That's answering like how we determine what is great, because everybody has different tastes, but
the only
it's
one
all
that,
about the amount of people who care about it.
I have only one example that I would claim is 100% in the favor of the argument that I'm trying to present myself, and that's with Neverwinter. So Neverwinter Nights had game modules that were sold after the fact as DLC, and their authentication was handled through the Neverwinter master server, right? So you'd pay your $10 for this module, or $7 or whatever it was, and later on down the line, access to those single player modules was taken away because the master server shut down. It could no longer authenticate the purchase, right? It no longer had that sort of ability being there. And that was something that EA did after BioWare said, yeah, it's totally never going to happen, or, you know, we'll patch it out. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Right. Which of course never happens when you're about to turn the lights out on something. So it's one of those things that is just a frustrating situation, because as game consumers, it makes logical sense. If we buy a thing, we want to own the thing, not IP rights, just the product to use. But I wonder if there are just so many gamers that have never played a game that got shut down yet. They haven't experienced it, because it does suck, right? You really like an old game and you want to go play it, and you just can't.
I mean, it's also the internal threat of Steam or GOG, where they shut down, they fail, something goes wrong, and your entire library is just gone.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then of course,
I think over the last 10 years or so, we can almost think about games moving from a physical good to a perishable good. So essentially moving from being, I don't know, a book to being like a carton of milk, right?
Yeah.
But like, is that okay? Right? Because here's
that's a reality of I would argue that's a reality of the way we distribute games and the way we make games, right? Because let's say even 10 years down the line, when Battlefront 2 gets shut down, and you can no longer buy microtransactions, you can say you don't really get the original experience that the game developers intended, because they clearly intended for those microtransactions to be there. Like the whole progression system was designed around it.
Yeah.
So it's something that we have to, and like some games are more susceptible to than others. Like your single player game that's done, and like your, let's say your Mario from SNES, probably closer to that physical good. That's, hey, if you have a cartridge and you have hardware that can run it, you can always run it.
Are you telling me that in 10 years, if I get Battlefield 2, I won't be able to get my full sense of pride and accomplishment?
Absolutely not. You'll have to stick it elsewhere.
I mean, I will say that there is,
oh my god,
the obvious advantage to our current environment is that as technology progresses, the defenses get weaker relative to what we can do. So, for example, in Metal Gear Solid 5, it was designed very explicitly to try and force you to spend money to upgrade your single player thing to get all the extra goodies and unlocks.
Yeah.
Then people made mods that completely broke that system, and now you can just do it however you want.
Yeah. That's fair.
While I don't support people necessarily pirating game, in a sense, as soon as it becomes abandonware, I sort of think it should be treated as released to public IP, and people can try and make it work regardless of what the initial intention.
From an ethics perspective, I totally agree with you. If the company is going to shut it down, and some entrepreneurial gamers decide, screw that, we're going to break it and keep it.
Yeah.
Hey, all the power to you, as far as I'm concerned. All right, we need to take.
It's a nice thought, but
we need to take a break. I need to get some more coffee, and we need to give noMad some time to breathe. It's all good.
Yeah, the wonderful. I have to say, the wonderful Mrs. Welsknight was kind enough to bring me coffee during that whole
you lucky
long-winded thing. So this is why marriage is important.
Lucky. All right, enjoy a little bit of music, and we will be back very shortly. All right, we're back. More discussion, more arguing, more yelling and screaming and whatever else there happens to be. So I don't. Maybe I shouldn't go with this topic first because we're just going to continue what we were talking about for the last little while. But let's talk about the Game Pass. So Xbox Game Pass has been updated, and retailers are all terribly upset. They're all grumpy pusses about it. I think it was in Austria. One of the retailers actually has pulled all Xbox hardware from their store because they're so angry at Microsoft for doing this. So what Microsoft is doing is they're saying that all first-party titles, at the very least, the next 3 that are coming out. So it was Sea of Thieves, Crackdown 3, and State of Decay 2, I think, are going to be a part of the Xbox Game Pass. And Xbox Game Pass is a lot like a Netflix subscription. So you pay them every month, and you get access to whatever games they've got, the 100 some odd games that are in there. And these brand new games are going to be simply a part of it as soon as the games launch. I think it's pretty awesome, but it sure as hell isn't owning the games, is it?
Well, so I think one of the big things to look at is basically Spotify versus buying albums, in the sense that it actually is better for the company because consumers will buy 1 to 3 games. Just throwing numbers out there. I tried to look it up earlier. There's no information on it. It sucks, but yeah. So 1 to 3 games per year.
Right.
So for the majority of people, they're spending more by using the Game Pass than they are currently. So all the money going to Xbox is actually, like, it makes more money for them, even if it's less on any individual basis.
Right.
So makes sense for Microsoft, but it's probably not going to be good. But it's in that weird situation of how do they distribute money? How do they do it? It can be like really bad for everyone else in a sense.
Okay. Wells?
I just noticed that one of my videos for today is like completely and totally messed up. So un momento, I'm a little distracted.
Oh, it's all good. Okay, noMad.
Sorry.
noMad, have at it.
It's an interesting topic because initially Game Pass, if I'm not mistaken, was $100 games from Xbox 360, and I don't have an Xbox, so I don't really have a horse in the race, but I found that proposition not very appealing. Like if I had an Xbox, because as I mentioned before, like specifically me, like I just don't have enough free time to go back and replay older games, and I feel that with the flood of games we have nowadays, not a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Like it's nice to have, right? But I think this definitely makes it a lot more appealing proposition. And just looking back when I was younger and had a lot more time, hey, paying $10 a month to have access to a lot of different games and like some newer ones sounded great to me. And I know some people online commented that it looks like a desperate move on Microsoft part, which it might be, because let's be honest, while they sold a lot of consoles, like 30 plus million, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
like they are still like losing this generation.
Yeah, because
And
PlayStation's between 75 and 80 now, right?
yeah, so they definitely need to do something to attract people to it. And I think it also opens up the way for them. If you remember when the Xbox One, like in the beginning of generation was coming in, there were rumors where they would partner up with like your TV providers, and you would be able to rent an Xbox similar to how you rent your set-top box.
Yep.
I think like it kind of goes in that direction where like, yeah, you don't technically own anything, but hey, if it's a reasonable price, and obviously you're gonna pay more in the longer term, but if the outlay every month, let's say, to get like maybe some backlog of games and some newer games on Xbox is $10, and you can rent that Xbox for like another 20 a month.
Yeah,
it's really appealing proposition for basically half of what like a big retail game would cost. Like to have your console and have like a supply of games. That definitely would be something that I think a lot of people.
I've had a running prediction for a while that at some point they're going to move to the cell phone model. And that's part of what is interesting and maybe a little bit scary about this change, and having a subscription service that is really, really strong, right? I mean, think about if Microsoft didn't sell Sea of Thieves, you could only get it through the Game Pass, right? You can't own it. It's simply a subscription thing. You want access to it, you pay your subscription, and you get access to all of these games that they produce. But
wouldn't it make sense for them?
I don't.
It's a multiplayer focused game, and I mean,
no, that's fair. But Sea of Thieves is not the only one, right? So State of Decay and Crackdown, their intent was to go with all of their first party stuff. They're just putting their things in there. But if you could make a subscription service that was appealing enough for people to stop buying games, right? It was going to be the new Netflix of video games, and you could make it where people desperately wanted it. Then you can start to roll out more frequent hardware iterations, and you can subsidize it through the subscription, just like people do with cell phones, right? Cell phone's $1,000. If you can pay $200 for your brand new console every 2 years on contract, while you've got a subscription service that gives you all the games you need, changes the market in a real hurry. Now, whether it'll happen or not, I don't know. But I've been curious about this one for a while, because Microsoft, with the 360, they did have a rent-to-own thing for a while. Where you would pay for your console on subscription for people that didn't have enough money to buy one outright. I think they're going to do that again. I think it's going to happen at some point. I don't know. Wells, how's that video going? You still good?
It's fixed. It's fixed.
Okay.
Luckily, I still had the raw footage, but man, somehow when it got rendered, it just like the audio decided it wanted to just be static. Original files totally fine in Premiere, rendered out as just like the mess of static. I don't know.
We'll write it up as a gremlins on YouTube.
Yeah, the life of a YouTuber. But anyway, yeah, so Game Pass. I think there is certainly a benefit from a consumer standpoint if we do end up with like a video game Netflix, essentially. If I can pay $10 a month to get, basically unlimited games forever, and they have just this giant catalog of games that I can pick from, and they get some exclusive, just like Netflix has, Netflix exclusive content. That's very appealing to me as a consumer, especially as someone who already pays for Netflix and HBO Now and Amazon Prime and all these other, kind of subscription services. Anything that I can do to essentially cut the cord, get away from cable, get away from having to go to brick and mortar stores, basically just the convenience of it is very appealing to me. And I think if it is a library where you have the ability to download games, play them, and then delete them and download a new game, at will, and there's a robust enough offering, I mean, what's the difference? I think a lot of gamers, if you're even slightly, even just your average gamer, I'd say probably buys a new game every couple of months, right? And we're talking AAA titles. That's $60 to $80 every couple of months to have, a new game every couple of months.
Yeah.
Whereas this would be $10, and you basically get the games as you want to play them, and when you're done with them, you can delete them off your hard drive or keep them or whatever until it's somehow removed from the library that they offer. So I think it really just comes down to like how robust is their selection of games that you're going to be able to pick from, and what games are in that selection.
I think the key is the new games.
Yeah, for sure.
Back catalog is important, and people being able to just kind of browse around and find something that tickles their fancy at any one point in time. But that was the same issue that Netflix had, right? When Netflix was nothing but old TV shows back in the beginning, it was growing, but it wasn't huge. As soon as they started having current stuff that was running now, that took it to a whole other level. And that's what I think is interesting about the whole Game Pass situation. They're putting new games out, so you don't have to buy that game. If you think you're going to only play it for a month, why would you pay $60 for it? Pay $10 for the Game Pass, or 15 or whatever it is. And play it for the month and then stop. I mean, you've saved yourself some money. Chances are you're going to keep that subscription going because they're going to keep releasing things. And if they've started with their own first party titles on there, you can bet that they're making arrangements with other developers to be a part of that program too, right on launch.
And I think it also, I'd even be fine as a consumer with like a delayed release sort of thing for Game Pass, right? So like the game comes out, and then maybe a month later it's released on Game Pass.
Yeah.
So that the people who really want that game super, super badly and they want to play it day one, can buy it from a brick and mortar store or order it on Amazon or whatever. And they have that option. But for the people who aren't necessarily super hyped for this major game that they want, the moment it comes out, they can wait a month and it'll be on Netflix or on Game Pass, which is kind of like how it is for Netflix. If I want to see, The Last Jedi, well, I'm not going to find that on Netflix right now. It'll probably be on Netflix eventually. If I want to wait for it, it'll get there eventually. But for now, if I want to see it, I got to go to a theater. And it's kind of that same concept. And I think that would still be a way to serve both the larger, the development studios, the retailers, and then also the consumer.
Where I think it's going to see. Go ahead. Oh, all right. Where I think that we're going to see a lot of pushback is actually going to not be from the brick and mortar stores because they're going to adapt or die out however it happens, but it's going to be from the publishers because EA especially, EA, Activision, those two especially they produce very iterative content. Next year's FIFA, next year's NHL,
Right.
or whatever Call of Duty's coming out. And in all the situations, there's not much reason not to have the previous year. So unless they're like forcing everyone to immediately go over to the new one, you're going to see a very hard cutoff date with those publishers especially. They're not going to like it when people can play the old games and still see people online.
Yeah. Well, I think that EA is going to actually change their publishing model for the sports games entirely. They're going to turn them into Overwatch and League of Legends and Dota and all of that kind of stuff, where it's simply an online game and you pay a subscription fee of some kind, or you pay some sort of entry fee to stay up to date. I don't know. I'm not really sure. But I mean, so do you guys think that Microsoft is doing this because they're so far behind, or do they see this as, is it more than that?
I think they ran the numbers. I think it's definitely the majority of consumers buy 1 to 2 games per year, or one to two AAA titles per year.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a way of making at least that much money and encouraging people to play more. And if there's so much online microtransactions and additional revenue, this is basically pure profit from the perspective of Microsoft and the major publishers.
Yeah. noMad, go ahead.
Let me shift the conversation a little bit and just take the temperature in the room. Would you guys be interested in similar idea of a Game Pass for Steam, for example? Because I'm assuming a lot of people here, like mostly like PC gamers, would you guys be interested to pay, and like how much, right? Let's say, for example, $30 a month to have access to the entire Steam library.
I would, absolutely. I mean, look at it this way. How many games do you have right now in your Steam library?
500.
Okay. How many of those games are actually installed and do you play regularly? Right now.
Probably 300, play regularly, maybe 2.
Exactly. You know what I mean? And then I think that's true of a lot of people. We have hundreds or thousands of games in our Steam library. I have right now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them installed. 7 of them that I'm actually playing, all of them that I'm doing a YouTube series on. Like that's my entire. Do you know what I mean?
And I think it's very like illustrative of majority of people, especially since gamers are getting older, right? I think the average age was like 33 or 34, right? Yeah. We don't have a lot of time. That's why games are kind of like magazines. You stay current within like certain parameters, like a few years. That's why for me, like service like that would be very interested. Like I would gladly pay Steam, I don't know, let's say I would say as high as like 50 to like $60 a month to have access to like the entire library and just like come in and say like, hey, if I want to play this game today, I just download, install it, and play it, right?
I think 50 to 60 is pushing.
Yeah,
I'd say 30 is about where I'd draw the line.
I'm probably lower. My only thought process is that from having that many games, I've sort of learned that I don't need more per se. Like I'm willing to wait until a game costs $2, $2.10 or $2 to $5 before I buy it because I know I have a giant back catalog.
And
Me
still
having the
it's-
entire
Sorry, no.
entire Steam catalog doesn't really encourage me, and it probably would cost more, and I would know it costs more in the long run. So I don't
But
think I
my
justify
idea
it.
would be think about it as like YouTube Red, where every month Steam would pay out developers based on the percentage of like hours of their game was played, right? So, for example, if you paid $30 a month and you played one game, Steam would take their cut, let's say the same 30%, and pay $20 to, I don't know, PUBG or something that you played for the entire month. I think that would solve also a lot of issues on Steam with like a lot of trash being released. Like, because why would you release something that you're not gonna get any money for?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's probably how the finance model of GeForce Now is working. There was a couple of stories recently about how they are solving a lot of the game streaming problems. So GeForce Now is they run a bunch of servers that actually run the game and they just stream the video to you. Right. And the big problem with this, of course, is there is some latency back and forth. But as soon as they start using the Amazon cloud stuff and putting instances in every city, that will go away. And I'll bet you that's how they monetize it, right? Those games, you pay your subscription fee, and whatever proportion you play of a particular game, that goes to the developer. Because I don't know how else you would do that with a subscription model. Like that's the only, unless you were going to put in like rigid revenue shares, which wouldn't make sense.
I mean,
Sorry, I'll be quick. Like what I'm proposing is basically similar to like all those cloud streaming services, just taking the cloud streaming out of it, right? So like taking out all the latency and everything, you still have the software on your computer, right? So you not have to deal with that, and you don't have to rely on the network infrastructure, right? Because especially US being the biggest market, and let's be honest, US internet is not that great.
Yeah,
depends
no,
on
It depends on where you are.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I know what you mean. I wasn't saying that it's comparable in that way. I just mean that's how, when you're running a subscription service, that's how you have to split out revenue shares, right? So Microsoft with the Game Pass, they'll have to do something similar because we have no idea who's going to play what game, and if a game is really popular, that developer should get some degree of money, unless they've signed away the full rights to it.
Yeah, the alternative is that they work out some sort of an agreement where they're, basically where Microsoft or whatever is licensing that game to appear on Game Pass for some sort of amount that they and the developers agree.
Lump sum or whatever. Dracco,
Right.
you had something there?
I tend to be pessimistic with this until I see like the actual development model. But I know Spotify has bowed to big creators in the past. So what they actually do is they'll give a set block to the major pop stars, the major bands, and then a much smaller amount based on how much you listen to.
Yeah.
To smaller ones. So especially they're worried about attracting the larger publishers who may be like, no, I'm very happy with having EA access. I'm very happy with having Origin, any of those. It's going to be interesting to see how they balance the need to actually get like the big guys versus the need versus being fair to the smaller publishers who might be willing to take a smaller cut if it means getting their game out there.
That's
I would
fair.
foresee it working sort of like how Amazon does it with Amazon Prime and their like instant video, right? So if you have Amazon Prime and you want to watch a video that's on their Prime streaming service, you can just watch it, right? If you don't have Amazon Prime, you pay for it. I mean, I would foresee it working something like that, where you either, when you go in, into the store or whatever, and you find the game that you want to play, it would say, purchase now for, I don't know, $49.99 or whatever. And then it would also say, download with Steam Direct or whatever the name of the thing would be called. I think Steam Direct might actually be a thing. But,
probably is.
Anyway.
I could actually see them giving earlier access to people on the subscription service. Sort of the reverse of what you're talking about a delayed release. So there's something similar. Nintendo also announced, sort of. I mean, there's not a lot of detail about this, but the Nintendo Switch Online, their online service, is supposed to be coming in September. So, what do you think they should have? What should they give? I want to say the dollar value is fairly low. Like they were talking like $5 a month kind of range. You know, keeping it relatively low. But what do they need to give people to make this worthwhile? Because it can't just be a chat client. Like there's got to be a mobile phone app instead of using the Switch. There's got to be more to it than that, doesn't there?
They
Absolutely.
Oh, you go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Nintendo, probably more so than any other company on the planet, has like the most robust back catalog of games that are older that people want to play.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't think of another company that has the same level of historical titles that people would want to go back and basically, you know, get that nostalgia from, right?
Yeah.
So I think Nintendo, what was it? Nintendo Online? Nintendo Switch Online. Yeah. I think one thing they should definitely be doing is offering access to a big library of your old classic Marios and your old Zeldas and your old, you know, pick a title, your Metroids, your Super Smash Brothers, your Mario Karts, all those like Nintendo IPs, those old NES, SNES, even like N64 and GameCube games. If they offered access to that with this, that would be amazing. Like that would be a huge value just right there. And then you couple that with other stuff that they're probably planning to implement already. I mean, there's certainly, this could actually be something that would be a great value. I mean, if it was $5 a month and I got access to all of Nintendo's old games that aren't produced anymore, I would be all over that. I would get my money's worth and then some.
There were some numbers about the SNES Classic. I didn't write it down, but I want to say that they had sold around 4 million.
I believe it.
I need to verify that. Like, don't quote me on that, but it was an obscene number of those things, which, you know, they had basically shorted the NES Classic, and then the SNES Classic's the same hardware with those. But I mean, if that's the demand, how could they not? I mean, it would be a huge lost opportunity because they don't have to pay license fees in any of those games. Those are all their titles. Dracco, you wanted to get in on that one.
Yeah, basically the way from the article you sent us, basically what I saw was it's definitely the best of bad breed. It makes sense from a financial standpoint. It's cheaper than all the other ones, and I mean, the Switch really isn't powerful enough to run it on its own. So if they're using it to pay for dedicated servers, makes sense. This seems like a good deal, and that's sort of weirding me out about Nintendo, honestly.
That is a little bit bizarre, but I mean they're all about fun. That's what they say. The Nintendo cardboard shenanigans going on.
They make amazing business decisions all the time. Let's be honest. Nintendo is more in touch with gamers and the modern gaming era than any other company.
I would strongly argue that. I think when it comes to business decisions, especially anything that has to do with the internet, Nintendo seems like bizarrely like 10 years behind.
Oh yeah,
it seems you missed the dripping sarcasm in my voice when I stated that.
Welsknight is always serious every last minute of every last day.
Completely. This is my serious face.
I think
very monotone.
Their cardboard shit is going to do really well. I have no interest in it myself whatsoever, but it shouldn't do well, but people are they're gonna love it. You know, you go down and buy a bunch of U-Haul boxes and screw it, make a robot, make a game, make it whatever. And
I think if they handle it properly with this, I think if they handle the Nintendo Switch Online properly, I think if they do it right, like it could be amazing. I think the odds of them doing it right are slim. But if it is done right, it could be a huge and awesome value as a consumer. I mean, $5 a month, even if it's like $10 a month, $15 a month, if they give access to that giant back catalog of old Nintendo IPs, like that would be worth every penny. You know, for a lot of people. And I think you could really give people a lot of value for that money. And I don't think, I think it's okay to have a subscription fee of some sort as long as you're getting good value for that subscription. And that's really what it comes down to. Nintendo has an opportunity to provide a lot of value for that subscription fee. And whether they actually take advantage of that or not remains to be seen. I'm not holding my breath, but you know, we'll see.
Yeah, makes sense to me. noMad, go ahead.
Well, let me, I guess, reverse my position so people don't think I'm a huge corporate shell. To me, as like a PC gamer, like paying for internet access, like not internet access in terms of like the provider, but on the platform, seems like completely bizarre. Like,
Oh, I
imagine
agree.
if Steam would be charging for you to play multiplayer games on it, like it just like it doesn't sit right with me. And so my thing, like they always trying to, like all the console manufacturers, because it's a closed system, they have control over it. That's why they are getting away with it, because it's they started way back in the day where internet access was like a new thing and like very exciting for everybody, and it's kind of stuck around. I'm waiting for one of them to break the cycle, because I think they can like imagine how much higher your Call of Duty sales would be on a console that doesn't charge people to play multiplayer.
Well, I mean, that already happened.
Yeah.
But PlayStation 3 had, was it PS Now or whatever it was, which was you paid, you didn't pay, and you'd have free access to multiplayer. I mean, that was done years ago.
Yeah, but then
they won the console.
Like PlayStation Plus, like where you get extra games. I just like I don't understand the concept of bundling, because like for me, like having choice would be better. So like I'm not opposed for Nintendo to charging for their back catalog and you having access to it, obviously. But why not separate those two services and have, if you want to play online, that's free. But if you want to have a back catalog, like that's something you can pay for monthly.
That's
because,
how
I think we'd all like I say.
I think we'd all prefer to see it done that way. I think all of us would prefer to see Nintendo say, if you buy a game that has multiplayer online capabilities, you don't have to pay extra to take advantage of those. I think we'd all love to see that.
Yeah.
I don't think we will see that because Nintendo.
No, obviously, because it's a closed platform, right?
Yeah.
So they can do whatever you want. Like if you're not paying them for like play online, you don't have other ways and means around that. Because
And
on
Nintendo
PC,
is
like no one is crazy enough to do it, because if Steam does it, well, guess what? First thing GOG's gonna advertise is, hey, you can play multiplayer games for free in our service, or like a lot of publishers will advertise it on their clients, right? So I think it just have to do with like this closed mentality and like platform holders taken, which is like I would almost think is a right from the consumers. Because it, like as I said, like I'm not like a big console gamer, so for me that never made sense. It always looked like very crazy, because you pay your ISP for your internet access, right? But then you have to pay them on like Nintendo or PlayStation, well, Sony or Microsoft, additionally for like internet access.
Well, who's paying for the servers?
It is a server thing, but to me, it's a lot more like, you know, the airline charging extra for the pillow and charging extra for the peanuts and all that. Just make a frickin' price and charge the price and be done with it. You don't need to nickel and dime every last little thing, right? They can work that into the price of the games and the price of the console. I think it's great that Microsoft is behind right now. I think it's brilliant. And it's unfortunate that Nintendo's doing as well as they are, because they might not give as much ground, right? That's why the Game Pass thing likely happened.
Probably.
Right? They're trying to catch up, and they have to give something that nobody else. Well, all right, fine. Brand new Microsoft games as a part of the Game Pass service. Beat that, Sony,
I mean,
because they're not gonna.
Well, and let's be honest. When it comes to Nintendo, the strength of Nintendo is and always has been in their IPs. In their Nintendo exclusive franchises.
Yep.
So, you know, whatever, when people buy a Switch, they're not buying a Switch so they can play Call of Duty. They're buying a Switch so they can play Mario and Zelda and Metroid and on and on and on the list goes for, you know, forever.
Although,
and the thing,
they're killing it with indies right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Nintendo is actually one of the best platforms if you want indie titles on your console right now, which is awesome.
Indie titles like Crypt of the Necrodancer are
loving
free. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah,
That's
I love
another
it.
reason why bundling their back catalog, which I assume a lot of people would want, was internet access doesn't make sense to me, especially on a Nintendo console, right? Because like Nintendo have very few like online connected games, so why just not make it free? And in terms of server costs, and I understand like servers are not cheap, and I think you can ask Tarmack, he can probably lay out the whole price and
Get the
on it.
break often too.
But vast majority of people don't play like online games for more than a few months, right? Because if you look at any game, like especially if it's a popular game, it has a huge spike once it releases, and then over the course of, I don't know, 3 to 6 months, vast majority of people drop off. So why don't roll in those server costs into the price of the game, right? Just rework your pricing strategy on the back. Don't just shove it off to the consumer.
Yeah.
Well, and that's exactly what Tarmac was saying. But the thing is, like, with Nintendo being with them having all those exclusive IPs, they do it because they can. I mean, ultimately, they are a business, and as consumers, whether we like it or not, they can get away with it because people are going to buy their console for those exclusive IPs, whether they charge for online access or not. That's just the reality of it. So, I mean, they're going to, if they can charge the extra $5 a month or whatever for it, as a company, why wouldn't they?
Mm-hmm.
I also think that the Switch is sort of underpowered to really run its own server or act as a server for multiple Switches, especially online. So while the Xbox 360 could have and did act as a server for Call of Duty games, the Switch is probably going to need to have a dedicated server base. So
yeah,
it's hard to necessarily tell how much money you need to allocate per person, depending on how popular it is, how dedicated people are to it. Historically, publishers have not been great with determining needs of servers ahead of time, as shown by Diablo 3.
Yeah, well, and that's the
servers are scalable. Like
no, but that's the point you're talking about, Nomad. Though is
at the start. Sorry,
you can't. Servers are scalable. However, predicting the peak is very difficult. Very difficult. And if that peak lasts for 2 weeks or 3 weeks and nobody can play, you can guarantee you're going to have a valley after it, right? Because you need to have enough to handle that enormous workload. But why would you buy servers to handle 100,000 people at the same time when you know a month from now that's only going to be 10,000 people playing ongoing, right? You're not... You have to be really careful on the outset, and that's why a lot of people are using Amazon cloud infrastructure and Azure and all of these other areas where they can just rent server space temporarily to try and manage some of these things. I don't know. I think the Nintendo thing really comes down to the value that they can provide, and it doesn't cost them anything, really. I mean, it would cost them nothing to just buy an emulator that some community member has made, right? And just do it that way. They don't have to pay licensing fees. They need to handle the download, right? So people can download the data, but I mean, that's manageable. And people would fall over themselves to buy a Nintendo back catalog that you can play on the Switch. I mean, come on. That's just the reality of it, I think.
For sure.
Yeah, that's why I would advocate for splitting the the ability to have access to multiplayer versus have ability to access the back catalog. Because let me give you an example. In my mind, multiplayer is almost like middleware. So imagine when you start the game, I don't know, let's say Horizon, right? And you had to, at the start of the game, it asks you, hey, would you like to pay $5 to have access to speed tree? Otherwise, all your trees gonna look like garbage. That's almost what a painful access to the platform holder to multiplayer looks to me like. The servers almost act like as a middleware, right? So that's something that, in my mind, the developers have to account for.
Yeah, and that's the difference between a PC gamer and a console gamer, because on the PC side of things, for the most part, you don't have to do that unless you're paying a subscription service kind of game, right? World of Warcraft, whatever. I don't know. I think we should move on and or start to close it up here. There's a couple of topics we didn't really get to. BioWare's Anthem being delayed because they're going to make a Battlefield game in the fall.
It's not delayed. It's only been pushed back.
Right. That's right. They did say this is not a delay, which makes me wonder where their dictionaries are kept. But such is the way it goes. And it's also impossible to find a video card right now because crypto miners are ruining the world or something along those lines.
It's a bane of my existence right now.
Yeah, well, it happens. I may or may not want to admit to doing a little bit of mining myself, but such is the way it goes.
Shame on you.
Yeah, it's that free market, right? You know, I mean, if prices go up because the miners are, well, I guess that's just how that goes.
Well, I mean, it's not even Bitcoin that's the issue, and that's really the big explosion. Bitcoin's really just driving the others as alternate goods. But the fun thing about Bitcoin is that so basically they messed up the algorithm, so it's actually it's like non-profitable whatsoever to run it on a GPU. You can only do Ethereum and a few others on non-dedicated hardware.
Yeah. I don't know. The interesting thing that I find about the whole crypto model is at some point gaming's going to get involved. They've started to try. Crytek has their little coin. There's a couple of other ones that are out there. I feel like at some point over the next little while they're going to get into a paying people to play kind of model, where you reward your players instead of paying for marketing costs, instead of paying for PR people and click throughs and conversions and all that kind of stuff. They're just going to start paying the players to do it for them instead. But that remains to be seen.
In the future, to be honest, because that sounds to me like bots, and since the publishers and the developers will be taking a cut of it, would they be actually be stomping on the bots? I don't know. Like it looks like a very dark future where you playing the game not to enjoy it but to make money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
also,
but you don't have to, right? Other people can play it to enjoy it. It's. I mean, no, go ahead.
So the issue is that that type of coin doesn't work as a store of value in the sense that what am I going to be able to buy with it? Who is going to take that or use it as a medium of exchange in the sense that who's going to take that and give me actual money for it?
Oh, well, that's where you mix the Steam economy with the coin, and you back it as a developer. If I have a game, I have several $1 million worth of marketing expense to put out and to promote this game, right? If I use that marketing expense as the backing for the cryptocurrency, I can use it and I can pay. I can buy that currency back from the gamers that are playing. They can trade it themselves. They can trade it for other in-game items. Like there's a whole economy thing that could exist here. Whether it turns out well or not depends entirely on how it's constructed, but it could work. I feel like it could.
I mean, I've been sort of against the whole. I've been claiming that cryptocurrency or confident that cryptocurrency is going to crash because the moment the average consumer gets involved in it, and the moment that it becomes like big, that's going to kill it pretty soon afterwards because it's going to bubble, it's going to crash, and people are going to be terrified of it for way too long afterwards.
Yeah.
Well,
hasn't that already begun?
For the sake of prices of GPUs,
to
be honest.
I'm not claiming a bubble until it's actually crashed and stayed low.
The stock market does this all the time. People get scared of it, they leave, then they come back, and then they bubble.
Not by
and
50% though.
No, not the entire market.
Let me just say that generally right now the climate for like building a computer, and I'm doing it actually right now, and I'm kicking myself in the head over it because if you look, like the prices of RAM have more than doubled since 2016.
Yeah.
The prices of SSDs went up like 30 to 40%, right? Partially because of the phones and this and that. Like right now is really bad time to upgrade your computer. Like it's extremely pricey. Like I kind of just started like 6 months ago, like building a new computer, and I'm still slowly getting the parts, but it's ridiculous.
It's really unfortunate for PC gamers right now, and hopefully give it another 6 months. NVIDIA will put out something new AMD hopefully will put out something new, and then you'll see a ton of things on the used market and some of that. The RAM one is one that really bothers me. We deal with that a lot at work, because you need, when you're building servers, you're not putting 16 gigs of RAM in it. You're putting 128 or better, right? Like, and it gets really expensive at that level. But oh, boys, I got to get going. I have somebody to go pick up, and then a turkey dinner to eat at some point in the not too distant future. So let us
translation for I'm tired of dealing with y'all. Got it.
No, not at all. It's that it's 5 minutes to the time that I planned this was over it, and we had an excellent. I said this. I was on the Ham Radio podcast yesterday, and I said this there too. It's, a conversation is good when you have a plan. It's all written out. We're going to talk about this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then none of it happens because one topic just swamps the whole thing. So I love it. It's great. Absolutely a blast. Let's start in. What order did we do this in? Let's go reverse order. I think we hit Dracco last. What are you up to over the next little while, and any other interesting tidbits or such and such? I mean, I know you don't really have a lot to shill, but that's all good.
Yeah, not really. Working on paper on the Dunning-Kruger effect and Bitcoin, to be honest, as a plan at least.
Fair enough. noMad.
Well, as I say, I'm not really creative, so I don't do much. The only thing I'm doing right now is like working on my computer. I just got some parts over the week, so I'm installing them and seeing what works, what doesn't.
Well, I hope you can get some, good solid build going. And
oh yeah, I take lots of time. The computer I have right now, I spent like 300 hours to put
put
together. Yeah, I do a lot of like custom work and like painting and cuts and then modifying.
Oh, nice, very nice.
Hey, might post the pictures later.
Yeah,
sure.
let's see those in Discord. Welsknight, what do you got coming up?
Oh, let's see. I've got the normal YouTube stuff, the Minecraft videos, and doing an Ark series with my wife, which she's like super excited about because there's cute dinosaurs and things, and she can, pet them and whatever. So that's pretty cool. Doing a lot of indie games and stuff on the second channel, Slay the Spire, Total War Warhammer 2, Isaac, looking at some other games as well, potentially coming up. Got another podcast that I'm going to be recording on Tuesday with some other people about how to grow a YouTube channel. Basically just, work and coffee. That's like my future.
That sounds excellent. All right.
Gotta love it.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tarmack. This has been the GnomeCast. We do this the first Saturday of every month. So if you enjoyed it, follow the channel. If you really enjoyed it, subscribe. For myself, upcoming XCOM 2 will continue. I do that basically on Tuesdays. It's a little Patreon. I name the characters and then kill them horribly. It's all kinds of fun. Looking into doing kind of an old retro series, old Sierra games, LucasArts, stuff like that. News wrap up on Sunday. And as I mentioned, the Ham Radio podcast I was on yesterday, I'll post a link on Twitter at GnomeCast for that if you're interested. Other than that, we're done. Have a lovely rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Adios.
Bye.